This is Steve Young for the Co-Roundtable on Moral Capitalism. It's early November 2025, and here in the United States, we have just had elections. And one of the issues in an important election in New York City was really moral capitalism. But I think there's a wider implication of the issues that were in dispute in this race for being the mayor of New York City, which are affecting, I think, the quote-unquote West in particular. We see these issues coming up in Europe. We see them in Canada. We see them in Australia. Roughly speaking, the division is between, quote-unquote, the right and the left in modern societies, with the right being identified with business and giving a lot of autonomy to business, and the left involved with taxing as many people as they can to transfer money to public services or to poorer people. So there's sort of this right-left division around capitalism. And where on a spectrum, from the far right to the far left, for me, my far right to my far left, where on the spectrum are you? Where on the spectrum is a political party? Where on the spectrum is the government in the UK? Where is a President Macron in France, who sort of seems to be in the middle, only he's gone through, what, 3 or 4 prime ministers in the last year because he can't form a sort of a majority in the National Assembly around his centrist position. We have the rise of the right in Italy, a government more from the right. We have a split in Germany between the left, the right, and sort of a weak center. We have the Scandinavian countries and the Netherlands, which tend to be more oriented towards the higher taxes and government services. What's the issue here? Well, I would back off a bit and say it's perhaps the value of a welfare state, a state which does not dominate capitalism. It doesn't cripple capitalism, but may I say, it uses capitalism. It uses the wealth and the money generated by capitalism to take some of that through government power, taxes, and then turn it over to other people. Maybe public schools, maybe lower bus fares, maybe government-run markets, maybe free education for some people, maybe it's free childcare for young mothers. But how did this come about? Just very briefly, historically, because I don't think enough people think about history, I was always taught that this really kind of started in Germany, late 19th century, under Bismarck, who was trying to deal, he represented the conservative social forces, the conservative sort of ruling elite, with a rising socialist party, who was demanding a different kind of government, demanding a government that would restrict the exploitation by the capitalists and the taking care of other people. Karl Marx put the case for this kind of government manipulation of capitalism as, from each according to his or her ability, to each according to his or her need. Now, what Marx really didn't sort of think much about is who's going to determine your need. I mean, suppose I say my need is to have champagne with my breakfast every morning. And you say that's not a need, that's a desire. So this now takes us to the issue of power. Who gets to decide? Here I think, we saw a split between Lenin and the other socialists around the issue of sort of democracy. Lenin and then communism, and then we had the examples of Mao, and we've got many other autocratic regimes that say the government has all the power. They determine things. There is no democracy. Somehow, some kind of elite, some kind of privileged group, some kind of people with better ideas, with better moral visions, with better character, they get to tell all of you what you're supposed to do, as opposed to the socialists, particularly European socialists, which say, no, we can have a democracy at the same time as we can have this welfare state. So in New York City, I think the voters there have moved more towards the democratic socialists, which means building up the welfare state at the expense of the capitalists. It will be interesting to see what happens.